In the book I have just recently written, titled Crash, about the rise and the exit of CEOs, one of the cases that I have touched upon is that of Chris Viehbacher, who used to be the CEO of a pharmaceutical company called Sanofi. He was a Canadian Belgian who was a brilliant pharma executive. He came into an all French company called Sanofi. He identified all the problem areas that he had to deal with. His mandate was to change the company and make it truly global. And as he started to do this, some of the board members got upset with the way he's doing things, and on the basis that he does not culturally fit in, Chris Viehbacher resigned from the company and went on to do his own things, and therefore resulted in an exit. And if you read Leo Tolstoy's book, Anna Karenina, it opens with the line that all happy families resemble each other, but every unhappy family is unhappy for its own reason. And in the same manner, I find that the rise of all CEOs have a great similarity, but the exits are all individually different in each case. And I was very interested in seeing if there is a common thread that I could find. And I think I have found one through analyzing 15 cases, all of which occurred, by the way, equidistant from me. I wasn't involved emotionally or in first-hand knowledge. They are both global and Indian cases, and I've done them purely through research. And in the book, these 15 cases appear, and I found that what is common amongst them is that all the exits are for the reason of not fitting culturally, which is a polite way of saying that their relationships were not very good. It is not to suggest that the fault is of the CEO, but it is to suggest that the exercise of power, and remember that the CEO is powerful, the chairman of the board is powerful, the directors are powerful, the investors, big investors are powerful. The lack of exercise of power can result from any of these corners. And so, if there's a common pattern, I was seeking what is that common pattern, and I arrived at what a very well-known mythologist, professor called Joseph Campbell, wrote in the 50s. He called it leadership story monomyths. And a monomyth is taking the essence of every story and seeing if there's a pattern in it. And I applied the same technique to business leadership failures, and I have arrived at a business leadership monomyth, which has 6 stages. And I'd just like to refer to these stages. The CEO candidate is in his own world, and he is doing his job. One fine day, he gets a call to adventure. Some headhunter rings him up and comes and says, here's a great opportunity. He then goes to the 3rd stage, where he may hesitate, but then he finally decides that the challenge is worth it. That moves to the 4th stage, when he joins and arrives at an action on what the hotspots in the company are and what he should do about it. And the 5th stage is that he goes through an enormous ordeal, because lots of people in the company are objecting or don't look favorably at the actions he's taking, and that finally results in the 6th stage, which is an exit. And one of the cases that we have in the book is the entry of Ramesh Sareen. Ramesh Sareen was a very successful executive in the cigarette conglomerate ITC Limited. And from that very senior position, he was persuaded through an advertisement that appeared in the newspaper to come and be interviewed for the position of the CEO and managing director of Voltas Limited. After all the processes were over, and he was felt persuaded, he was given the mandate to change the culture of the company, and Ramesh Sareen went about doing his job. Very soon, it resulted in a lot of frayed relationships, partly because the former CEO, his predecessor, stayed on as a non-executive chairman of the company. It led to an enormous amount of unrest and ordeal, and finally, a very fine officer like Ramesh Sareen found it necessary to move on from Voltas, and he had a very successful career in Carrier and in other ways. But I'm using this story to illustrate the existence of what I call a monomyth. That by analyzing the story of the exits of CEOs, one is able to see a pattern in this. And it is that pattern that I have identified in this book called Crash: Lessons from the Rise and the Exit of CEOs.